No one could get close to the billionaire's daughter until a single father working as a janitor did the unexpected. Why could no one get close to the billionaire's daughter? And what could a single father working as a janitor possibly do that was so unexpected? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We're thrilled to have you here for another captivating story filled with mystery, emotion, and unexpected moments. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our newest uploads. Thank you so much for watching, supporting the channel, and joining us for every story. Now, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What would you do if you saw someone no one else could get close to? With that question in mind, let's step into the beginning of this intriguing story. Claire's scream shattered the medication tray before the doctor's hand came within a foot of her. Back away. Claire, we need to examine you. Don't touch me. The billionaire's daughter slammed herself against the reinforced window, her bare feet slipping on the cold vinyl floor. White pills scattered beneath the bed, under fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. Her breathing came sharp and fast while antiseptics stung the air. A nurse reached toward the emergency button. Claire seized a stainless steel pitcher and raised it between them, not as a weapon, but as the only wall she had left. The doctor stopped. Security arrived within seconds. Shoes struck the hallway in clipped, synchronized beats. Radios crackled. Magnetic locks snapped into place, sealing the treatment wing behind two sets of fire doors. Clear the corridor. Authorize restraints. Her guardian already approved intervention. Through the narrow observation panel, Claire saw blue gloves, dark uniforms, and faces studying her as if she were a problem that could be solved by enough hands. She backed into the corner beside the bed and gripped the pitcher until her knuckles lost their color. No one noticed Ethan at first. His gray janitor's uniform blended into the corridor, and one knee of his work pants was damp from scrubbing beneath a leaking ice machine. The sour smell of disinfectant clung to his mop. A ring of brass keys rested silently against his hip because he had wrapped them in a cleaning cloth to keep them from rattling near patient rooms. You need to leave, a guard told him. Ethan looked at the red light above Claire's door, then at the cluster of people blocking every visible exit. He did not challenge the order. He did not claim to understand her. He simply rolled his cart back 20 feet, parked it against the wall, and removed the plastic caution sign from the center of the corridor. Then he sat on the floor. With his back turned to Claire's door, Ethan dipped a cloth into warm water and began wiping away the muddy prints left by the security team. Slow stroke. Rinse. Slow stroke. No sudden movement. No face at the glass. No demand for her attention. What is he doing? A nurse whispered. His job, the guard muttered. But Ethan was leaving something untouched, a wide, clean path between Claire's doorway and the opposite end of the hall. The doctors had surrounded her with instructions. Security had surrounded her with bodies. Ethan, without saying a word, gave her distance. Inside the room, the pitcher lowered by an inch. Claire's breath still fogged the window, but her gaze shifted from the uniforms to the man who refused to look at her. The mop fibers whispered over the vinyl. Warm water clicked against the side of the bucket. Gradually, the corridor stopped advancing. Hold position, the doctor said at last. The restraint team remained ready, but no one crossed the threshold. Ethan continued cleaning with his shoulders turned away, accepting the risk that supervisors might see idleness where he had chosen restraint. Minutes passed. Claire moved from the corner to the edge of the bed. Her fingers loosened around the pitcher. Then she placed it on the floor. She did not open the door. She did not speak. Yet for the first time that night, the choice of how close another person came belonged to her. When Ethan finally rose to wring out the cloth, a faint sound came from behind him, glass touching the floor near the door. He paused without turning around. On the other side of the narrow window, Claire was watching to see whether the janitor would respect the distance she had given him. 3 soft taps crossed the midnight corridor, almost disappearing beneath the ventilation hum and the squeak of a distant cart. Cold fluorescent light glazed the secured wing, sharpening the smell of disinfectant and damp cotton. Ethan waited beside the door with a folded cloth in one hand. "Housekeeping," he said. "I'm cleaning the hallway." No question followed. No hand touched the latch. After several seconds, he lowered his gaze and moved past the narrow observation window without looking through it. Claire remained beside the bed, listening as the mop traveled over the linoleum in slow, even strokes. The pattern repeated through the night. 3 taps before Ethan approached. 3 taps before he shifted the yellow caution sign. 3 taps before the metal wheels of his bucket entered the patch of light beneath her door. Other people announced themselves with keys, credentials, and instructions. Ethan announced only distance. At 1:17 a.m., a nurse stopped beside him with a paper cup of coffee. Did she tell you anything? No. Did you ask about her father? No. The nurse studied him, then glanced toward the dark window in the door. Ethan rinsed his cloth in gray water, the plastic wringer giving a tired creak. Then what are you waiting for? She asked. Nothing, he said. She doesn't owe me a conversation. Inside the room, Claire's bare feet shifted against the cool floor. Her eyes moved from the door to the drinking glass lying on its side near the threshold. A thin crack ran through it, catching the blue glow of the monitors. She crouched, wrapped the glass in a washcloth, and held it for several breaths. Outside, Ethan continued down the corridor. He did not linger. He did not turn. The wheels of his cart faded toward the nurse's station, leaving only the dry whisper of conditioned air. Claire placed the wrapped glass against the bottom of the door and pushed. It caught on the rubber seal. She pulled it back. The cloth scraped softly over the floor, loud enough in the stillness to make her shoulders tighten. One more push sent the bundle beneath the door, where it slid 6 inches into the corridor. Ethan heard it. His cart stopped. For the first time, Claire had placed something inside another person's reach. He returned only after giving 3 quiet taps against the wall, where she could hear them without mistaking them for someone entering. Then he crouched with his body angled away from the window. I see it, he said. May I take it? Silence held for 5 seconds. A fingertip appeared beneath the door and tapped the floor once. Ethan lifted the bundle carefully, set it in the rigid sharps container on his cart, and covered the opening. Thank you, he said. Not good job. Not progress. Not a question dressed as praise. Just respect offered without demanding anything back. The fingertip vanished, but the shadow beneath the door remained. Ethan rose and began pushing his cart away. Metal wheels clicked over a seam in the linoleum. Behind him came 3 small taps from inside the room. He stopped without turning. Claire had not merely allowed him to remain nearby. She had learned his language and used it to call him back. Ethan placed one hand on the cart, waiting at the distance she had chosen. Then the lock gave a soft mechanical click. The fire alarm split the midnight corridor with a metallic shriek, and white strobes began hammering against the secured wing's glass. Cold air poured from the vents, carrying the sharp smell of disinfectant as magnetic locks released one after another. Inside the room, Claire recoiled from the clicking door and pressed herself beside the bed, fingers twisted in the fabric of her gown. Evacuate her now. Guardian authorization is active. Bring the restraint chair. 3 security officers advanced beneath the pulsing lights. Claire seized the bed rail. Its wheels squealed across the linoleum as she dragged it between herself and the doorway. An officer reached for her arm, and her breathing became a broken rhythm beneath the alarm. Ethan left his cart against the wall. Don't interfere, the lead officer warned. We have protocol. Ethan looked past him at the open corridor, where 2 illuminated exit signs pointed in opposite directions. Then he crossed the threshold. He did not approach Claire. He did not offer his hand. He took the janitor's key ring from his belt and placed it on the floor, where the brass keys struck the tile with a clean, deliberate note. The sound cut through the siren because it asked for nothing. Ethan lowered himself onto one knee, keeping 6 feet between them, his shoulders beneath Claire's line of sight. Behind him, security filled the doorway. Ahead of him, Claire had nowhere left that belonged to her. West stairwell is clear, an officer said. Move. Now, another snapped. Ethan pointed first toward the red exit sign beyond the nurse's station, then toward the service passage behind his abandoned cart. Claire, he said, his voice low enough that everyone else had to stop speaking to hear it. You choose the door. The lead officer stepped forward. Ethan raised one open palm without looking back. It was not a threat. It was a boundary, and crossing it could cost precious evacuation time. 30 seconds, the officer said. Claire stared at the two exits. Red light swept over her bare feet, vanished, then returned. Smoke doors were descending farther down the wing with a heavy mechanical rumble. She released the bed rail. One step carried her out from behind the barricade. A second brought her onto the cold tile. On the third, she stopped close enough to see the worn stitching at Ethan's shoulder. No one touched her. No one decided for her. Claire bent, picked up the key ring, and placed it in Ethan's waiting palm. Then she tapped the back of his hand 3 times. Ethan remained kneeling. Which one? Claire pointed toward the service passage. That door. Her voice was rough from disuse, but it held beneath the alarm. Security moved aside. Claire walked past Ethan under her own power, choosing each footstep and every inch between them. Only after she crossed into the service corridor did Ethan rise and follow at the distance she set. The fire door sealed behind them with a deep steel thud. In the sudden dimness, Claire turned toward the officers gathering at the opposite end. They were no longer watching a patient being removed. They were watching a woman who had just refused to be carried. Above the sealed door, a black camera lens blinked red, preserving every second of Ethan's disobedience. The lead officer touched his radio. Control flagged the janitor's badge. Effective immediately. Ethan heard him. Claire did too. This time, she did not retreat. She stepped between Ethan and the security team. The camera's red light kept blinking after the alarm stopped, preserving the one thing hospital leadership could not tolerate: a patient choosing for herself. Cold fluorescent light washed over the service corridor, and the air smelled of wet concrete and scorched wiring. Ethan stood behind Claire at the distance she had set until 2 administrators arrived with security. Claire returns to her room. Ethan comes with us. Now. Claire planted herself between them, but Ethan set his keys on the linen cart and stepped forward before the officers could reach past her. You already chose your door, he said quietly. Don't let them make this choice yours too. The administrative conference room was 10 degrees too cold. A projector hummed against the wall while the footage played without sound. Ethan entering the secured room, lowering himself to the floor, disobeying the evacuation order. The image froze on his outstretched keys. No one played the seconds, showing Claire walking out by herself. You violated lockdown protocol, an administrator said. I did. You interfered with authorized care. I gave her 2 exits. You are not a clinician. Ethan folded his rough hands on the polished table. A pale strip circled one finger where years of disinfectant had cracked the skin. No, ma'am. His badge landed beside the frozen image with a soft plastic click. Suspension without pay, effective immediately, pending review. By sunrise, the silent security footage had been cut into 11 seconds and sent to local news. Hospital janitor plays doctor with billionaire's daughter, the caption read. Commentators laughed beneath studio lights. One called him reckless. Another called him an attention seeker. Outside the employee entrance, reporters waited behind silver barricades while sleet ticked against their umbrellas. Ethan left through the loading dock wearing his work jacket inside out, but a phone camera caught him anyway. Did you think you knew better than her doctors? Were you trying to get money from her father? Do you regret it? Ethan kept walking. His shoes scraped salt across the pavement, and the automatic doors closed on his silence. At home, the kitchen radiator knocked unevenly beside a stack of unopened mail. Lily sat at the table in purple pajamas, breathing through a nebulizer while its small motor buzzed like a tired refrigerator. Ethan checked the medicine cup, then opened the hospital pharmacy message on his phone. Refill authorization received. Insurance contribution pending. Patient responsibility, $486. He counted the bills in his wallet twice. $43. Lily lifted the mask. Are you working tonight? Not tonight. Tomorrow. The nebulizer mist curled between them. Ethan looked at his folded uniform on the chair, then at the suspension notice glowing on his screen. We'll figure it out. His phone rang before he could put the mask back in place. The hospital's billing office gave him until 5 o'clock the next afternoon to secure payment for Lily's medication. When the call ended, Ethan removed his janitor badge from his pocket and laid it beside the inhaler. On television, his own blurred face appeared beneath the words "untrained employee." Across town, inside the secured wing, Claire watched the same clip. The broadcast ended before showing her choice, but the black screen reflected her standing beside the door. For the first time, her hand moved toward the handle without anyone asking. The deadline on Ethan's phone read 17 hours, 12 minutes. His respect had cost him his job. By tomorrow evening, it could cost Lily her breath. Cold fluorescent light spilled across the secured wing as the lock released with a heavy metallic click. A nurse looked up from her station, pin suspended over the chart. Claire stood in the doorway without shoes, one hand gripping the frame, the chilled tile pressing pale marks into her feet. "Did Ethan send you?" the nurse asked. "No." "Has he spoken to you?" "No." "Are you asking for your father?" Claire's fingers tightened against the brushed steel. "I'm asking for the board." The nurse glanced toward the security desk. Claire tapped the frame 3 times, then stepped into the corridor before anyone could reach for her. The elevator carried her down through 12 floors of antiseptic air and humming cables. By the time its doors opened, the hospital board had gathered around a walnut table beneath warm recessed lights. Ethan's frozen image glowed on a wall monitor. Janitor uniform, lowered head, the words "lockdown violations" stamped beneath him. Claire entered alone. Chair scraped. A board member reached for the telephone. "Return her to the wing." "Sit down, Claire. Your guardian authorized this meeting to proceed without you." She remained beside the empty chair at the end of the table. Rain ticked against the tall windows, soft but relentless, while the ventilation system stirred the sharp scent of coffee and furniture polish. "Play the rest," she said. No one moved. "The footage ends where the news report ended," the chairman replied. Claire placed both palms on the cool tabletop. "Then I'll tell you what your edited clip removed." The monitor went dark. Every face turned toward her, but this time she had chosen the room, the distance, and the moment. "Ethan did not treat me. He did not diagnose me. He did not promise to fix me." Her voice caught once. She swallowed and continued. "He put down his keys. He lowered himself below my eye line. He gave me 2 exits and asked me to choose. He violated an emergency order," the chairman said. "He preserved an evacuation. That determination belongs to licensed staff. My choice belonged to me." The rain sharpened against the glass. Somewhere beyond the closed doors, a cartwheel squeaked across linoleum and faded away. Claire pulled out the empty chair, but she did not sit. For months, people entered my room with forms, restraints, permissions, and my father's name. Ethan entered with nothing he could use against me. He was the first person who asked what I wanted and waited long enough to hear the answer. A legal advisor leaned forward. "Are you refusing medical care?" Claire slid her patient wristband from beneath her sleeve. The plastic edge had left a red groove against her skin. She placed it over Ethan's frozen badge number on the printed incident report. "I am refusing treatment under any system that punishes the one person who respected my consent." The chairman's jaw hardened. "Your guardian can authorize continued care. Then you can explain why the billionaire's daughter walked willingly out of a secured room. Yet your hospital called the man who made that possible dangerous." Silence settled over the walnut table. Not surrender. Not confusion. Recognition. Claire turned toward the door. "Reinstate Ethan and correct the public record, or I will not return to that wing." Security waited outside, but no one ordered them forward. For the first time, the board was not deciding whether Claire could leave. It was deciding what her voice would cost them. The pharmacy clock clicked to 4:47 beneath a strip of humming white light, each second bright and merciless against the glass. A heater breathed dry air across shelves that smelled of cardboard, antiseptic, and winter coats. Ethan stood at the counter with Lily's prescription in one hand and a debit card in the other. Lily sat several feet away, rubbing the frayed cuff of her sweater while a faint whistle followed every third breath. "Try it again," Ethan said. The pharmacist lowered her eyes to the terminal. It still declined. "Can you feel part of it?" The inhaler isn't divisible. The card reader chirped once more, sharp as a locked door. On Ethan's phone, unopened messages crowded the screen. Reporters asking for interviews, producers offering money for Claire's private history, strangers promising donations if he would describe what happened inside her room. One network had raised its offer to $5,000. Enough for the prescription. Enough for groceries. Enough to make necessity sound like permission. Ethan pressed the power button until the screen went black. "I won't sell someone else's worst day," he said. The pharmacist glanced toward Lily, then back at the medicine waiting in its white paper bag. "I can hold it until 5. The red digits changed to 449. Across town, the boardroom had emptied, but Claire remained beneath the amber wall sconces. The walnut table felt cold under her fingertips. Through the closed doors came the muffled cadence of administrators discussing legal exposure, donor confidence, and how quickly her guardian could be reached. The chairman returned carrying a thin folder. "We'll correct the footage," he said. "And Ethan? His suspension remains pending review." "Then you have corrected nothing." He placed the folder before her. Inside was a prepared statement restoring the missing seconds of the evacuation video while describing Ethan's actions as unauthorized and potentially dangerous. Claire read to the signature line. Then she tore the pages once, slowly. The paper fibers rasped in the quiet room. "You want my voice without my choice. We are trying to protect you." "No. You are protecting the version of me that cannot contradict you." The chairman's expression tightened. "If you walk out without authorization, your guardian may petition for emergency control of your care." Claire removed the hospital wristband she had laid over Ethan's badge number. The plastic snapped under the pressure of both thumbs. She set the broken pieces on the polished table and opened the door herself. No security officer touched her. No nurse directed her steps. But the secured wing would not take her back, and the board would not reinstate Ethan. At 4:58, Ethan slid Lily's unfilled prescription into his jacket and carried her toward the parking lot, where sleet ticked against the awning and salt crunched beneath his work shoes. His phone lit again. This time the caller was the hospital billing office. "Mr. Cole, the assistance fund received an anonymous payment for $486. Ethan stopped under the blue pharmacy sign. "Return it." "Sir, if it came from Claire or anyone connected to her case, return it." Lily's fingers curled into his collar as another tight breath trembled against his neck. Ethan closed his eyes for 1 second, then handed the pharmacist the title to his aging truck and accepted the emergency loan she helped him arrange through the store's hardship partner. The interest was brutal. The medicine was Lily's. By 5:06, the inhaler hissed softly in the back seat while Ethan watched sleet blur the windshield. His truck no longer truly belonged to him. His job was gone. His silence had cost him the last thing he could sell without betraying Claire. Then the pharmacy door opened behind them. A nurse from the secured wing hurried into the freezing rain, carrying Ethan's personnel file against her chest. She stopped beside his window, breath clouding the glass. "Claire left the hospital," she said. And before she did, she asked one question no one here can answer. Ethan lowered the window. Icy air rushed inside. The nurse held out the file, but did not release it. "She wants to know why a janitor understood what every specialist in that building forgot." Sleet rattled against the truck roof while the inhaler released one last measured hiss from the back seat. The nurse's fingers tightened around the damp personnel file, its cardboard edge darkening beneath the pharmacy's blue neon. Ethan looked through the rearview mirror until Lily's breathing settled, then switched off the engine. "Claire deserves the answer from me," he said. "Not from a file." Across town, Claire waited in a quiet consultation room outside the secured wing, wearing her own coat instead of a hospital gown. Her broken wristband rested on the steel table. Rain traced the black window, and the air smelled of antiseptic and burnt coffee. Ethan entered alone, placed the unopened file beside the wristband, and took the chair farthest from her. "Were you a doctor?" Claire asked. "No, a therapist?" "No." The fluorescent light buzzed above them. Ethan kept both hands visible on his knees and left the space between their chairs untouched. "I worked in crisis response," he said. Hospitals, schools, disaster sites. I was trained to enter chaos, take command, and get people out. Claire glanced at the file, but did not reach for it. Then why are you cleaning floors? Ethan's wedding ring turned once beneath his thumb. Outside, a cart squeaked across polished tile and faded down the corridor. My wife called me during a crisis deployment, he said. I saw her name. I chose the job. The ring stopped moving. By the time I came home, she was gone. Claire's fingers curled around the torn wristband. Ethan did not soften the truth or decorate it with excuses. He told her how every commendation afterward had sounded like a door locking, how Lily had learned not to ask when he would be home, how he had finally resigned because saving strangers had become the language he used to avoid the people who loved him. So you quit because you failed her? Claire asked. I quit because I kept calling control the same thing as care. The rain thickened against the glass. Claire pushed the personnel file away from herself and toward him, refusing the institution's version of his life. And with me. I recognized the room, Ethan said. Not because you were a case. Because everyone outside that door wanted your obedience more than your trust. You knew how to make me come out. No, his answer landed quietly. I knew I had no right to make you. Claire's hand went still. Ethan leaned forward only enough to place his keys beside the broken wristband, the same worn keys he had surrendered on the floor during the alarm. That was the unexpected part, he said. Not stepping closer. Stopping. Letting you choose what happened next. For several seconds, there was only the cold ventilation and Lily's faint cough from the hallway, where the nurse sat with her. Claire picked up the keys and tapped them 3 times against the table. Then she rose. This time, Ethan did not lead her, and Claire did not wait to be led. She opened the consultation room door herself and faced the nurse. I need every record showing who authorized my confinement and who edited that footage. The nurse looked toward Ethan. Claire did not. Her voice remained low, but it no longer asked permission. They turned his restraint into misconduct and my consent into silence, she said. Now they answer for both. Beyond the glass doors, headlights swept across the wet pavement as a black sedan pulled to the curb. The nurse's face tightened. Your guardian is here. Claire closed her hand around the broken wristband. Good, she said. I'm done speaking through doors. Rainwater slid down the boardroom windows, turning the city lights into long silver scars. The ventilation hummed above a polished walnut table, and the air smelled of wet wool, burnt coffee, and antiseptic drifting in from the corridor. Claire entered without an escort. Ethan remained beside the rear wall in his faded janitor's uniform, while the nurse stayed outside with Lily, whose faint cough came between the soft clicks of her inhaler. Claire's guardian rose first. This meeting concerns your medical stability. No, it concerns my legal freedom. Sit down, Claire. She placed the broken wristband on the table. You no longer give me orders. 3 commands. 3 refusals. Around them, leather chairs creaked, screens awakened, and the room settled into the brittle quiet that comes before power discovers it can bleed. Claire inserted a hospital drive into the console. The first file showed authorization for prolonged confinement signed by her guardian despite 2 physicians recommending a less restrictive setting. The second displayed the original evacuation footage. Ethan kneeling, his keys on the floor, Claire choosing the exit herself. Beside it ran the 11-second broadcast clip, stripped of her approach and cut to make his restraint resemble recklessness. You edited out my choice, Claire said. Her guardian's cuff link struck the table. I protected you. You protected control. He warned that challenging the guardianship would trigger the inheritance clause attached to her family trust. The estate, the voting shares, the homes bearing her mother's name. She could lose all of it. Claire's fingers tightened around the edge of the lectern until her knuckles blanched. Then she opened the final document. I filed for immediate termination of guardianship 20 minutes ago. These records have been delivered to my attorney and the state patient rights office. The board counsel leaned toward his microphone. If you proceed, the trust may disinherit you permanently. Cold rain ticked against the glass. Ethan made no move to rescue her from the decision. He had already taught her the dignity of an open door. Walking through this one had to be hers. Claire removed the family signet ring from her hand and set it beside the wristband. Then let the money keep the cage. By emergency vote, the board revoked her guardian's authority over her treatment pending court confirmation, suspended the executives responsible for altering the footage, and ordered a public correction clearing Ethan of impersonating medical staff. Her guardian stood motionless as security collected his access badge. No one applauded. Respect entered the room more quietly than triumph. When the doors closed behind him, Claire crossed to Ethan. "I won't insult you with a check." "Good," he said. "I wouldn't take it." She placed a slim proposal folder on the janitor's cart between them. It outlined a trauma care program built around consent, patient-controlled exits, and crisis workers trained to preserve dignity before enforcing compliance. "Help me build what they forgot," she said. Ethan glanced through the glass. Lily sat beneath the corridor's pale lights, inhaler in her lap, while the nurse rested a hand near her shoulder without crowding her. "I'm not the man I used to be," he said. "That's why I'm asking the man you became." Claire extended no contract and offered no fortune, only a choice. Ethan rested his hand on the folder, but did not open it. The board had restored his name. Claire was asking what he would do with it. "There's one condition," he said. "Patients hold the keys." Claire tapped the broken wristband against the cart 3 times. "Then tomorrow," she replied, "we begin with the first door." 3 soft knocks sounded against the first door of the new trauma care suite. Morning light lay across the polished floor, catching on fresh brass locks and a row of key hooks mounted low enough for every patient to reach. The air smelled of new paint and hospital coffee. No guards crowded the threshold. No hands waited beside restraints. Ethan stood several feet back in his restored janitor's uniform, the proposal folder tucked beneath one arm, while Claire waited inside with the door open behind her. "You can come closer," she said. Ethan did not move. "Are you asking me?" he replied. "Or proving that you can?" The ventilation system whispered overhead. Claire looked at the clear path behind her, then at the key resting in her palm. "I'm asking." Only then did Ethan cross the final stretch of floor. He stopped beyond arm's reach, leaving the remaining distance to her. Claire stepped forward and placed the key in his hand. It was cool, ridged, ordinary, and heavier than either of them expected. "This one isn't yours," she said. "It belongs to the first patient." Ethan returned it to the lowest hook. "Then it stays where they can take it." Through the glass wall, the nurse waited with Lily beneath the warm corridor lights. Lily's new inhaler rested in her coat pocket, and a pharmacy receipt marked paid protruded from the nurse's folder. Ethan's truck keys were still absent from his belt. The loan had cost him the last valuable thing he owned. Claire noticed the empty clip, but offered no check, no car, no disguised rescue. Instead, she opened the program's employment agreement and turned it toward him. The paper carried the hospital seal, his reinstated benefits, and a salary earned for work, not charity. "Crisis Dignity Coordinator," Claire said, "with school-hour flexibility. And authority to stop a session? If consent is withdrawn, yes. Even if the board objects." Claire slid her broken wristband beside the signature line. "Especially then." Ethan signed. Beyond the glass, Lily raised her inhaler like a small salute. The nurse opened the door but remained outside, allowing the child to enter on her own. Lily walked to Ethan, pressed her cheek against his sleeve, then looked toward Claire. "Are you the lady Dad helped?" Claire crouched, keeping several feet between them. "Your dad reminded me I could help myself." Lily considered that, listening to the faint squeak of her sneakers against the floor. Then she took a visitor's key from the lowest hook and offered it to Claire. "You should keep one too." Claire closed Lily's fingers around it. "Today, you choose who carries it." Lily tucked the key into her pocket beside the inhaler. Weeks later, the corrected evacuation footage played in the hospital lobby without edits. Ethan's name appeared beneath a public apology. Claire's guardianship had been terminated, and the first patients entered rooms designed with unlocked exits, softer lights, and chairs that faced the doors. Yet the true change was quieter than any announcement. When Claire approached Ethan in that same corridor, no alarm sounded, and no one instructed her where to stand. She closed the distance herself and held out her hand. Ethan looked at it, then at her face. Your choice. My choice. He took her hand, not as a rescuer claiming someone he had saved, but as a father, a worker, and a wounded man accepting the respect she freely gave. Around them, executives, nurses, and patients fell still. The man who had once done the unexpected by refusing to cross her boundary now received the final miracle. Claire crossed it herself, and the silence belonged to dignity.